standard song, a la George Gershwin or Rodgers and Hart. I mean,
An everyday song like one by George Gershwin or Rodgers and Hart. Think about this. 1979 in Los Angeles. Behind the scenes at the famous Troubadour. The place is crazy busy, with sound checks with guitars screaming and drinks clinking. Legends are walking through the halls. Then all of a sudden chaos. A young helper walks into the promoter's office and looks very upset. Ronstadt walked out of the green room just now. Once more. Why? There is only one name on the list of performers. They are not hers or the Eagles. His. She was gone after one look. Not a fight, not a question, just a cold exit, and complete quiet. No one knew what really happened that night for years. Who is Linda? She never said why. There were no public fights or tantrums that would make the tabloids laugh. There were just well-mannered interviews, and an image of unshakable grace. That silence stayed with her for decades. Now though the quiet is broken, in a very honest moment, Linda Ronstadt is finally telling everyone which 7 singers she will never forgive. The ones who hurt her pride, pushed her as an artist and showed the worst parts of the music business. What about the list? It's not what you think. These aren't minor fights or old complaints that are going away. For a whole age these stories were the stuff of rock and roll power plays, broken promises and quiet revenge. What shocked you the most? Some of the people on that list used to be her best friends. First on the list is a drummer who became famous and used her as a stepping stone before jumping all over her. Also, don't think you know who it is, who became too big to play the drums. Don Henley used to be Linda's drummer and backup singer before the Eagles became famous in the rock world. Thankful that she brought attention to him. In the early 1970s, Linda Ronstadt was a rising star who made theaters across the country full. Henley, he was the quiet guy behind the kit, going along with her fame. He got his first big break from her. Everything changed when the Eagles took off though. Henley stopped being the humble artist all of a sudden. His pride grew along with the band's fame. The group that used to open for Linda looked like they owned Sunset Boulevard as they walked down it. For Henley, it was like he was king of the canyon, ignoring the woman who helped him start his career. That's when things broke in 1975. Henley said something behind closed doors at the Universal Amphitheater that hurts to this day. Laughingly, he told Linda she should stick to cover songs and let real artists talk about their music. The words were not only rude, but they also put down everything she had worked hard for, and done with pure ability. Lisa didn't just leave, she took away his tour papers right then and there. There are no second chances. There were rumors going around the business. Too long no one had stopped Henley from being cocky. Friends and roadies talked quietly about his temper tantrums caused by cocaine, the selfish choices he made, and the mean things he'd say to people behind closed doors. The thing that hurt Linda the most wasn't just being lied to, but also being treated badly. She would later call him a climber, who lost his soul while chasing fame when they were alone. Some other people also did something wrong. Why is Linda's next fight on? Backstage. It didn't happen in silence. It happened live in front of an audience, with a drunk singer, a mic that was taken, and a humiliating moment that was so public that she never forgot it. The night Jim Morrison did something wrong. The year was 1968. Even though the summer of love was over, the chaos was still going on. Because the Doors were electric, they burned through every stage they touched, and Linda Ronstadt was still working hard to make a name for herself in a field that was mostly men's. At a private after-party that night, near the Whiskey A Go-Go, stars and outcasts mixed openly. But when Jim Morrison saw Linda, no one saw what would happen. He was going through the crowd with his shirt half undone, and a few drinks already in his hand. Morrison pulled Linda on stage without notice in the middle of the show, when he was both crazy and proud. It wasn't planned. It wasn't cute. It was careless. He then leaned in. He tried to kiss her in front of everyone. Linda automatically pulled back. Morrison lost his balance, and hit her mic stand, which almost brought the whole set down. People gasped, stared, and whispered. The crowd wasn't sure if to laugh or freak out. Though the moment was never caught on camera, it became a tale that was told behind the scenes and on late-night radio shows for years. Morrison never said sorry. He even went even further. After some time, he made fun of her in a radio talk, calling her sweet but spineless and saying she was harmless and forgettable. Linda didn't answer back in public, she didn't. But when no one was around, her words hurt a lot. People close to her thought Morrison was a clever wreck who ruined everything around him. He wasn't just a crazy act to her. He stood for the unhealthy manhood that tried to take over the music business. And while Morrison's actions hurt people emotionally, the next betrayal wasn't said with slurred speech or kisses from someone who was drunk. It happened at a time when everyone was on the same page. Linda thought she was with friends, supporting a movement she believed in, and a cause she had risked her job to support. But then one of her friends turned on her. The time when protests got personal. Neil Young. The year was 1976. The biggest names in rock music came together for a benefit show for farm workers. Two of the artists were known not only for their voices but also for their beliefs. There's Neil Young and Linda Ronstadt. At first they seemed to be on the same side, fighting for a cause they both really cared about. But when the cameras started rolling, everything changed. When Neil started ignoring Linda's artistic ideas, things got heated behind the scenes. He turned down her ideas for the set list, wouldn't let her play some songs, and even said her sound was too commercial. What's worse, he is said to have told the press after the show that she wasn't made to complain. It was clear what it meant. Linda wasn't really herself for the fight. She cried as she left the event. It wasn't just a jab. It hurt because it came from someone she looked up to, and thought shared her views. Being called hollow by another campaigner hurt more than any critic could. Things changed after that night. After that, Linda and Neil Young never shared a stage together again. No matter how good the cause was, behind closed doors, she told him she thought he was loud and mean. When he was that cocky, she thought his action didn't mean much. But if that moment made her feel bad emotionally, the next one would break her artistically. The next lie didn't come from behind-the-scenes negotiations or public comments. It happened in the middle of a studio session. She lost all of her confidence with just one scary line in front of a whole room of musicians. Frank Zappa. When talent turns into cruelty. When they met in 1974, it felt like an important event. Frank Zappa was experimental, unpredictable, and known as the mad genius of experimental rock. Linda Ronstadt, on the other hand, defies genres, can't be stopped musically, and is on the rise. On paper, the partnership had the potential to change the rules. It fell apart in just a few hours instead. Promise was the first word. When Linda said she really wanted to record one of Zappa's songs, things went badly. As soon as they got to the studio, with a smirk, Zappa turned down her original ideas, saying she sounded too clean. She was trying to water down his music, he said, making it sound like a business song instead of raw art. At its worst, the stress broke during a live practice. Right in the middle of the set, Zappa stopped the band. There was silence in the room. He then sneered in front of everyone. "It sounds like this when you give real music to a pop singer." It got cold in the room. Linda did not scream. She didn't argue back. As she quietly packed up and left, she felt ashamed, hurt and done. She never came back. She never worked with Zappa again after that. She didn't say anything in public, but behind the scenes, her close friends remember what she said very well. She said that Zappa was smart and mean. She liked his mind, but she could never trust him again. Still, having creative disagreements with artists who were hard to work with was one thing. What did you do next? It hurt more than that. The next person on her list wasn't a strange genius or a crazy singer. It was someone she used to call family. Another trailblazer who betrayed her when it meant the most. David Crosby. The fallout from Laurel Canyon. In the golden haze of Laurel Canyon, Linda Ronstadt and David Crosby used to sound a lot alike. They shared more than just stages and studio time. They also had an unspoken faith that went back to the counterculture movement. They both helped to create Crosby's harmonies and Linda's singing that crossed genres were both part of the same wave of change, and that link seemed impossible to break at the time. But by 1978, there was no longer any peace. Asked for a simple key change during a singing session for a track they were working on together, so that her voice would sound better. Crosby said, "You should learn to adapt," which was a rude way to turn her down. What started out as a small argument quickly became a big problem. They fought with angry words, and it didn't stay in the studio. Within days, it got out to the press and became one of the most talked about fights in the canyon. It didn't end there though. Crosby said in Rolling Stone that Linda was manufactured, which meant she was more of a product than a skill. It was a knife to the heart for Linda, whose whole career was based on her natural talent and creativity. She didn't answer questions in talks. She didn't, but she wasn't being inactive when she kept quiet. She moved in a quiet but clear way. People in her band and close group were not allowed to say his name. Artists in the studio were told not to talk about him. His songs was taken off of her tour playlists. There was no longer any sign of him in her world. Crosby had broken not only a friendship with Linda, but also a shared image of what Laurel Canyon used to be. She talked about him as a warning sign behind closed doors, proof that drugs, ego and fame can take over even the smartest people. The deception by Crosby was personal. But the next thing on her list was more cold. It was a public jab that turned punk poems into cruel weapons. Provocation by punks. The insult to Elvis Costello in public. It was 1979, and Cleveland was a lively city. People from all walks of life had come together for a big event. Linda Ronstadt, who had a string of records that went straight to the top of the charts, was one of the main acts. She was a well-known force when she was at the height of her powers. Everyone was looking at her that night. Also, Elvis Costello owned one of them. He was the fresh new face, bold, bright, and barely filtered. He is the smart, rebellious punk rocker with a point to make. But what came next was a surprise. Costello scoffed at a group of reporters, and said that Linda's set was background music for lunch. It wasn't just a jab, it made them look bad in public. The words got around quickly, and when Linda talked to him backstage, she was hoping to get more information, or maybe even an apology. But what she got was something completely different. Someone said Costello was drunk and cocky. He looked her in the eye, insulted her again, and then walked away without saying sorry. She didn't look back. She thought Elvis Costello stood for more than just one rude comment, because he was smart but cold, critical without compassion, and cruel just because he was a new kind of artist. She didn't see any soul in his defiance. She only saw ego, but that anger couldn't compare to the last sadness on her list, and the last name wasn't that of a wild rocker, or a brash newbie. It belonged to someone whose music should have gone well with hers, with voices that went together so well, it seemed like fate was trying to bring them together. But the fight was clear behind the scenes. What was supposed to be a dream teamwork turned into a quiet war. Needs control or perfection. Paul Simon's abrupt firing. In 1982, it looked like the right way to work together. Paul Simon was one of the most famous and respected musicians of his time, and Linda Ronstadt was the queen of vocals that didn't fit into any one genre. Fans and people in the music business were both thrilled when she decided to sing a duet with him on his upcoming album. It looked like a dream on paper. It was really a nightmare that got worse over time. Things didn't feel right from the first practice. Simon picked apart her performance, stopping takes to fix words that didn't need to be fixed. He changed the words without asking her first, and the vocal advice he gave her seemed more like criticism with a thin veneer. Linda's friends and family say that she later said it felt like getting in trouble with the headmaster. Every note she sang was looked at closely, but not backed up. The chemistry never came together. The spark of creativity died because of pride and condescension. In the end, the song was put away, not finished, not released, and not talked about for years. Linda, on the other hand, wasn't hurt by just one track. It was about being thought of as less important. A talent, and a history like hers, should have had a partner. What she got instead was a tyrant. She then told herself something in private. She was not going to work with Paul Simon ever again. And with that last crack, Linda Ronstadt's silence on her biggest betrayals was broken for good. 7 artists, 7 scars that have been hidden for decades behind years of beauty until now. There is a story behind every harmony that no one hears until someone is brave enough to tell it. Why she didn't say anything about it for so long. Lisa Marie Presley has never been one to feed the rumor mill. She let the music talk for decades. The truth, not getting back at someone, is what these discoveries are about. Not only did she have talent, but she also had to deal with egos, betrayals, and a cruel business. She's not putting other people down by finally telling these stories. She's taking off a cover, because the strength we find isn't always in the songs we sing but in the quiet we break.
Which of these stories made you feel the most shocked? Also, do you think Linda was right to keep quiet all those years? Tell us below. Please like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.